There was a popular idea for about a decade that Sonic's friends were a big problem and that the series would be better without them. Sega, displaying their typical underdeveloped intellect, opted to severely limit the use of these characters outside of spin-offs, often leaving popular characters out for years on end. But were they ever really a problem? No. The answer is no. Only stupid people think they are. Sonic's friends started becoming especially prominent in Sonic Adventure, taking what had previously been 3 playable characters and doubling it. The game's 11 levels are shared by up to 3 of the characters, but are segmented differently and offer different styles of gameplay. Red Mountain sees Sonic run around the outside of the mountain and then through the interior of the volcano. Knuckles glides and climbs around the first area to find emerald shards, while Gamma shoots his way through the interior and caps it off with a boss fight. Twinkle Park has an area shared by all 3 characters, but between normal Sonic gameplay, Amy's Zero Chase, and Big's fishing, it never feels like the same level, which was a huge change from Sonic 3, where all 3 characters did the same levels, just with a few unique paths based on their abilities. Sonic Adventure 2 then took this setup and refined it. Now, while we still have 6 playable characters, Sonic Team took only the 3 best gameplay styles and split them over 2 characters each to create a fantastic rival system. Actually, I've seen it theorized that the game was only going to have 3 playable characters originally based on early trailers. But regardless, this game handles reused locations very differently from prior games. While assets are reused to set multiple stages in the same locations, level layout is always entirely different. Pumpkin Hill and Skyrail, Radical Highway and Mission Street, the half-dozen Space Colony Arc missions, all of them have unique layouts to go with the different gameplay styles to make them feel completely unique. Hell, even when multiple of the same type of stage are set in one location, they offer unique mechanics or aesthetics to shake things up. Now, you may be wondering what any of this has to do with Sonic's friends. In truth, not much. It's actually in relation to the real issue which became apparent in Sonic Heroes. This game offers 12 playable characters spread across 4 teams of 3 that consist of a speed, flight and power character. To many, 12 is too many characters. To those who actually contemplate what is being offered here, they realise that you only really have 3 characters, 1 if you really boil it down. While the formations are distinct, each team plays mostly the same. There are a few differences in how certain characters of a given style play, yes, but the differences are negligible, even compared to SA2. And that's the issue. Instead of unique levels for these very similar characters, each team has to play through the exact same levels in almost the exact same playstyle, they just make a few tweaks to each of them. Team Sonic has the normal stage, Team Dark has a harder version, Team Rose has a shorter, easier version, and Team Chaotix has a weird alternate objective. This is nothing like SA1 and 2's multiple character systems, and actually the equivalent of if SA2 had taken its 5 missions per stage and assigned a different character to each, forcing the player to go through them all to finish the story. Heroes has about as many stages as any of the prior games, but you have to do them all 4 times. More if you miss an emeralds, which are now acquired through special stages like in the classic games, requiring yet more replays of stages already cleared in the event the player fails to acquire them all. Repetition is the issue here. Sure, you could improve the game by cutting 2 of the teams, and that would technically be improving the game by removing half of Sonic's friends, but you could just as effectively fix it by splitting the stages and bosses between the 4 teams and having the player only play each once. And speaking of improving a game by only having to play it once, Shadow the Hedgehog. The game's legacy is its meme-worthy edginess and the subpar controls, but the game has a really cool core concept that was implemented in a way that dragged the experience down. In Shadow, the player is given 2 to 3 objectives per stage, split between Hero, Dark and Neutral, each sending the player to a different stage afterwards to create very different arcs for Shadow as he approaches one of 10 different endings. Some see him rise as a hero or defender of the Ark, some see him follow his genetic destiny and join the Black Arms, and others still have him succumb to Eggman's lies and believe himself an android copy of the real Shadow. It's a really cool idea. However, the game offers a last story like the prior 3 games. But without multiple campaigns to clear, how does one gain access? By obtaining the 10 regular endings. Each campaign is only 6 stages long, with a few boss fights tied to specific stages, but that totals 60 stages and at least 10 boss fights, probably closer to 30 all told. And while there are a whopping 326 uniquely named paths through the story, that doesn't change the fact that you have to play Westopolis 10 times, likely going for each objective and then the subsequent 3 stage options 3 to 4 times each. And all with a single gameplay style a la Heroes. And it's made all the worse by the fact that none of these endings actually matter because the last story gives the true conclusion anyway. If things had been streamlined into just 3 paths of 9 stages you jump in and out of as you go, totaling 3 refined versions of the existing endings, maybe with a variant for each to allow Shadow to approach each conclusion differently, perhaps even acting the last story to leave the conclusion open-ended until the next game, the experience would be a lot less repetitive. So you can now see that the main issue wasn't the expansion of the cast, that was mostly poor timing. Hell, Shadow features the full Heroes cast aside from Big, but only as support for Shadow himself. So that's not the issue here. It really is the repetition that was the issue. This isn't like Dragon Age Origins, a lengthy RPG with different starting points that have small effects on the locations you visit and your relationship to certain NPCs, where you do one playthrough and then put the game down for a few months before doing the next variant. This is Sonic, a series all about going fast and revisiting levels soon after to improve your scores. They're designed for you to do everything in quick succession as one solid block of an experience. But Sonic Team got too ambitious and made games that would have benefited from having their scopes cut in half. And that's where Sonic 06 came in. This game was touted as a back-to-basics game that I can tell you my exact thoughts about as more was revealed, albeit with more extensive vocabulary than I could manage at 14. It's just about Sonic, but that's fine because a more streamlined experience is refreshing after multiple multi-route games. Oh, Shadow 2? Okay, he's cool, and we want to see how he's moved on since his own game. Silver? Okay, a telekinetic is a new idea, so that should offer a unique gameplay experience. They also have 2 supporting characters we also play as. No, stop, go back! Of course, the Amigo system isn't all that intrusive, really being closer to the minigame levels and sections from SA1 and 2 than truly full playable characters. No, repetition wasn't this game's problem outside the repetition of the infamous loading times. It was basically everything else, the physics, the gameplay, the story. This was the gameplay valley of the series, which had been on a decline since around Heroes. And so, with everything going wrong all at once, fan frustration reached a fever pitch. People started pointing fingers, and Sonic's friends were put in the line of fire for coinciding with the series' steep decline in quality. After this, Sega opted for a proper back-to-basics approach with Unleashed, which featured only Sonic in 2 playable forms despite there being several characters who could fit the Hedgehog gameplay just as well, and the cast was reduced to just Sonic, Tails, Amy and Eggman, with a single one-off newcomer being introduced. Colors axed the Hedgehog as well to refine the boost gameplay and only introduced Orbot and Cubot, who were just comic relief. Generations brought back classic Sonic, and this was where things really turned around for the series' critical reception. Briefly. And while Sonic's friends are all featured here for the celebration aspect of the game, they're relegated to damsels the Sonics have to save. They're most prominent in a unique minigame or 2 that aren't all that fun, which has nothing to do with the characters themselves, it's the minigames being mid in a game whose core levels are immaculate that is the problem. And so the Sonic's friends' hate continued unabated, really only simmering down in recent years as, outside of Forces and Dream Team, they've been essentially gone outside of the core 4 thanks to the number of spin-offs also being reduced. This really has been one of those cases where the vocal minority pressed their view to the forefront to where it looks like the majority, and the owners listen to them, leaving those who disagree to sit quietly until those guys finally shut up about it to allow a different take to come to the fore. You see it everywhere, with universally loved or panned media getting a re-examination a decade or so later, or when the first wave of hateful and glazing YouTube and Twitter comments is over and other people get their say. It's not a shift in public perception, it's the loudmouths finally shutting the hell up to allow a broader spectrum of opinions through. And it's time for us fans of Sonic's friends to stand up and say, Sonic's friends were never the problem, they were always good, and you guys just want Sega to remake Sonic 2 and 3 over and over for eternity. Try having good taste for once, Sonic stans. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is How Sonic 06 Handles Multiple Characters by BikoriBox12. Best Sonic tuber bar none, consistently funny, with this video discussing an interesting topic related to this one. Good stuff as always.